Comment where you're watching from today, as we share the story of how an ordinary evening at Beverly Hills General Hospital became an extraordinary lesson in respect, dignity, and the power of standing up for what's right. Sarah Chen had been a nurse for 15 years, the last 5 of them in the hospital's busy emergency department. Her shifts were long, her duties endless, but she maintained her compassion and professionalism even on the most challenging nights. What she didn't know was that this evening would be different from any other in her career. The emergency department hummed with its usual controlled chaos. Monitors beeped, phones rang, and the constant movement of staff and patients created a familiar rhythm. Sarah moved efficiently between rooms, checking vitals, administering medications, and offering comfort to those in her care. Among her patients that evening was Richard Thompson, a wealthy real estate developer who had come in with what he claimed was probably a heart attack, but was more likely indigestion. His demands had been constant since his arrival, each one delivered with increasing condescension. "Nurse," his voice carried down the hallway for the dozenth time that hour. "How long does it take to get decent service in this place? I've stayed in better hotels in third-world countries." What no one in the emergency department knew was that Jason Statham had arrived quietly through a side entrance, hoping to avoid attention while visiting a friend who had been admitted earlier. The action star moved through the corridors unnoticed, his casual black t-shirt and jeans helping him blend in with the visitors. Sarah responded to Thompson's call with professional patience, though exhaustion showed in the slight slump of her shoulders. 14 hours into her shift, she had already dealt with 3 genuine emergencies, a grieving family, and countless smaller crises. "Mr. Thompson," she began, her voice maintaining its calm professionalism, "your test results should be back shortly. Is there something specific you need help with?" The wealthy patient's face twisted with disdain. "Need help with? I need competent care. Do you have any idea who I am? The donations I've made to this hospital could probably pay your salary for a decade." Statham, passing by the room, slowed his steps as he observed the interaction. His trained eye noted the nurse's subtle signs of fatigue, the way she maintained her dignity despite the patient's behavior. "Sir," Sarah replied patiently, "we're providing the same high level of care we give to all our patients. Your test results will be ready as soon as the lab processes them." Thompson's response carried the entitled anger of someone used to not getting his way immediately. "The same care as everyone else? Do you think I donate hundreds of thousands of dollars to receive the same care as everyone else?" Other staff members in the corridor quickened their steps, trying to avoid being drawn into the confrontation. This wasn't the first time wealthy patients had tried to demand special treatment, and it wouldn't be the last. "Perhaps," Thompson continued, his voice deliberately loud enough to carry to the nurse's station, "we need to discuss your position here with the hospital administration. I'm sure they'd be interested to know how you treat their major donors." Sarah's face remained professional, but Statham caught the slight tremor in her hands as she checked the patient's foreline. The action star had seen enough movies to recognize a bully, whether they wore expensive suits or not. "Your care is our priority, Mr. Thompson," Sarah said quietly, maintaining her composure. "We're doing everything we can to dash." "Everything you can?" Thompson interrupted. "Like making me wait hours for test results? Like treating me as if I'm just another patient? Do you have any idea how much influence I have with the hospital board?" The threat was clear, and its effect was visible in the way other staff members avoided eye contact as they passed the room. Sarah stood her ground, but the weight of the constant abuse was beginning to show in her posture. What happened next would transform this ordinary evening into something extraordinary, teaching everyone present a powerful lesson about respect, dignity, and the true meaning of value. But for now, Statham continued to observe, his jaw tightening as he witnessed the casual cruelty being displayed. Thompson's voice rose again, now directed at a young orderly who had entered to collect routine samples. Do you people have any training at all, or do they just pull you off the street? This is supposed to be a premium hospital, not some public clinic." The orderly, barely out of training, fumbled with his collection kit as the wealthy patient continued his tirade. Sarah stepped in smoothly, helping the young man gather what he needed while maintaining a professional buffer between him and Thompson. "Mr. Thompson," she tried again, Everyone here is highly trained and dedicated to providing excellent care. If you could just dash. If I could just what? Thompson cut her off. Accept substandard care? Watch my concerns be dismissed by staff who clearly don't understand the meaning of premium service? Perhaps it's time to make some calls, see about having some changes made to the staffing here. The threat hung in the air, its implications clear to everyone within earshot. Sarah's shoulders straightened slightly, years of professional pride warring with the very real fear of losing her position. In the current healthcare climate, even unfair complaints from wealthy donors could have serious consequences. Statham had seen enough. The action star had played many roles in his career, fought countless villains on screen, but what he was about to do would prove that sometimes the most powerful acts of heroism happen in quiet moments of standing up for what's right. As he stepped into the room, his presence still unrecognized, he carried with him not just his celebrity status but a deep understanding of what it meant to be underestimated and disrespected. What followed would not only change the evening's dynamics but would teach everyone present a valuable lesson about true worth and the real meaning of care. The emergency department continued its usual rhythms, monitors beeping, phones ringing, staff moving efficiently between rooms. But something extraordinary was about to unfold, proving that sometimes the most powerful moments happen not in dramatic emergencies, but in simple acts of standing up for what's right. The emergency department at Beverly Hills General Hospital had grown tense as Jason Statham stepped fully into Richard Thompson's room. The action star's presence, though still unrecognized, brought a subtle shift to the atmosphere. His quiet confidence stood in stark contrast to Thompson's blustering demands. "Excuse me," Statham said, his voice carrying the calm authority that had made him famous, "but I couldn't help overhearing your comments about the staff here. Perhaps we should discuss what real premium service looks like." Thompson, not yet recognizing who was addressing him, turned his disdain toward this new target. "And who exactly are you? Another undertrained staff member here to waste my time?" Sarah Chin stood her ground, though her professional mask showed signs of strain from the hours of abuse she had endured. The young orderly had retreated to a corner, still clutching his collection kit, watching the scene unfold with nervous anticipation. "Actually," Statham replied, his voice remaining measured, "I'm someone who understands the difference between genuine quality and empty demands. Would you like me to explain that difference?" Something in his tone made Thompson pause, his usual certainty wavering slightly. The wealthy patient's eyes narrowed as he tried to place why the stranger in casual clothes seemed somehow familiar. "These people," Statham continued, gesturing to Sarah and the orderly, "have spent their careers learning to save lives, to ease suffering, to provide care with dignity. Tell me, Mr. Thompson, what exactly have your donations bought that's more valuable than that?" The question hung in the air, its implications clear. Other staff members had begun to gather near the door, drawn by the unusual confrontation taking place. Among them was Dr. James Morrison, the hospital's chief of emergency medicine, who had arrived to check on the situation with the demanding patient. "Now see here," Thompson began, attempting to reassert his authority, "my contributions to this hospital dash." "Your contributions?" Statham interrupted quietly. "Let's talk about contributions. Nurse Chen here has spent 15 years contributing her skills, her compassion, her dedication. That young man you just berated? He's studying medicine while working full-time, contributing his efforts to learn how to help others." The action star's identity was beginning to dawn on some of the observers, whispers spreading through the gathered staff. Thompson, however, was too focused on his indignation to notice the shifting dynamics. "This is outrageous," he sputtered. "I demand to speak with hospital administration immediately. I'll have all of you dash." "You'll have all of them what?" Statham's voice carried a dangerous quiet. "Fired for doing their jobs with professionalism despite your abuse? Punished for not treating you like royalty while they manage multiple critical patients?" Dr. Morrison stepped forward then, his presence adding institutional authority to the confrontation. "Mr. Thompson, I've reviewed your test results. There's no indication of cardiac issues. Your symptoms are consistent with acid reflux, exactly as Nurse Chen suggested 2 hours ago." The wealthy patient's face flushed darker, But before he could respond, Statham added his own observation. "You know what I've noticed in the past hour? While you've been demanding special treatment, I've watched Nurse Chen check on 6 other patients, assist with an emergency procedure, and mentor 2 junior staff members. All while maintaining her professionalism despite your constant abuse." Sarah stood straighter, something in the action star's words reinforcing her own sense of worth and dignity. The young orderly had begun to emerge from his corner, drawing strength from the unexpected defense of the staff's value. "Do you know what real premium service looks like?" Statham continued, his voice carrying to everyone gathered near the room. "It's not about demanding special treatment or throwing around donations like weapons. It's about the kind of dedication I've witnessed in this department tonight." Thompson's expression had begun to shift from anger to uncertainty as he finally recognized who was addressing him. The wealthy developer's face paled slightly as he realized his behavior had been witnessed and confronted by someone whose influence far exceeded his own. "Mr. Statham," he began, his tone dramatically different, "I had no idea you were Dash." "No, you didn't," the action star cut him off. "You had no idea who might be watching. That's rather the point, isn't it? Character isn't about how you treat people when you think someone important is watching. It's about how you treat everyone all the time." The emergency department had grown unusually quiet, the usual chaos momentarily suspended as staff members watched this unexpected scene unfold. What happened next would transform not just one evening but the entire culture of how the hospital handled abusive behavior from wealthy patients. Dr. Morrison cleared his throat, years of diplomatic handling of difficult donors warring with his desire to support his staff. "Mr. Thompson, while we value all our supporters, we also have strict policies about treating our staff with respect." "Perhaps," Statham suggested, his voice carrying just enough edge to make his meaning clear, "it's time those policies had some real teeth. I'd be happy to discuss my own potential support for the hospital, conditional on establishing clear consequences for this kind of behavior." The implications of this offer rippled through the gathered crowd. Thompson, understanding that his position had shifted dramatically, attempted to backtrack. "I may have been somewhat harsh in my comments, Dash." "Somewhat harsh?" Statham's quiet question carried more weight than any shout. "Let's review your behavior, shall we? You've threatened careers, demeaned professionals, and attempted to use your money to buy the right to abuse people who are trying to help you." The action star turned to address the gathered staff directly. "This stops today. Not just with this patient, but with any patient who thinks wealth buys the right to abuse the people who provide their care." Dr. Morrison nodded slowly, something in Statham's words and presence giving him the courage to take a stronger stand. "Mr. Thompson, I'm afraid we'll need to discuss your future relationship with this hospital. While we appreciate your past support, we cannot and will not tolerate abuse of our staff." The wealthy patient's face showed the dawning realization that his usual tactics had not only failed but had backfired spectacularly. His attempts to intimidate staff had led to his own position being questioned, his threats of influence countered by someone with far more power than he possessed. But Statham wasn't finished. His next words would not only address the immediate situation but would set in motion changes that would ripple through the entire healthcare system. The action star was about to demonstrate that sometimes the most powerful scenes don't involve physical combat, but rather the courage to stand up for what's right and the wisdom to create lasting change. The emergency department's usual rhythms had begun to resume, monitors beeping, phones ringing, staff moving between rooms. But something had shifted in the atmosphere, a new understanding emerging about the true meaning of care, respect, and value. The emergency department at Beverly Hills General had transformed into something extraordinary. As word of Jason Statham's confrontation with Richard Thompson spread through the hospital, staff members began sharing their own stories of abuse they had endured from wealthy patients who thought money bought the right to mistreat them. "Your support of this hospital is appreciated," Statham continued, addressing Thompson but loud enough for everyone to hear, "but it's nothing compared to the daily contributions of these healthcare workers. They don't just write checks, they save lives, ease suffering, and maintain their dignity despite constant disrespect." Dr. Morrison had pulled out his phone, making a call that would change the hospital's entire approach to staff protection. "Get the board chairman on the line," he instructed his assistant. Tell him we need an emergency meeting about implementing a zero-tolerance policy for abuse of staff. And yes, that includes donors. Thompson, still processing how dramatically his position had shifted, attempted one last defense. Surely we can discuss this reasonably. My donations have funded entire wings of this hospital dash. And what good is a new wing? Statham interrupted quietly, if the staff working in it are treated like servants rather than professionals. Tell me, in all your years of writing checks, have you ever held someone's hand while they received devastating news? Have you ever worked a 16-hour shift caring for people at their most vulnerable? Sarah Chen stood straighter as she listened to these words, years of suppressed dignity rising to the surface. Other nurses and staff members had begun sharing knowing looks, recognizing their own experiences in this confrontation. You know what I've noticed? Statham continued, his voice carrying through the now attentive department. The real heroes aren't the ones who demand attention and special treatment. They're the ones who show up every day, do their jobs with excellence, and maintain their professionalism even when faced with disrespect. The young orderly who had been berated earlier stepped forward, finding courage in the action star's words. Sir, he addressed Thompson directly, I work here full-time while studying medicine. Every person on this staff has similar stories of sacrifice, of dedication, of choosing to help others despite constant challenges. Thompson's face showed the first signs of genuine discomfort as he began to see the situation through new eyes. The wealthy developer's usual tactics of intimidation and financial threats had not only failed but had exposed him to a harsh truth about his own behavior. Dr. Morrison returned from his call with news that would transform the hospital's culture. The board chairman has authorized an immediate policy change. We're implementing a new code of conduct that applies to everyone, including donors. Abuse of staff will result in immediate consequences, regardless of financial contribution levels. But Statham wasn't finished. That's a start, he said, but let's talk about real change. Instead of just protecting staff from abuse, why not create a program that actively supports and recognizes their contributions? The action star pulled out his phone, making a call of his own. Remember that charity foundation we discussed? He said to someone on the other end. I think I've found the perfect first project. How quickly can we set up a fund for healthcare worker support? The emergency department staff listened in growing amazement as Statham outlined a program that would provide additional resources for staff development, mental health support, and recognition of exceptional service. More importantly, it would establish clear guidelines for protecting staff from abusive behavior. You see, he explained to the gathered crowd, real change isn't just about stopping negative behavior. It's about creating a culture where everyone's contributions are valued and respected. Thompson, watching his position of influence crumble, attempted to salvage something from the situation. Perhaps I could contribute to this new program dash. Perhaps, Statham cut him off smoothly, you could start by apologizing to the people you've abused today. Real change begins with acknowledging our mistakes and choosing to do better. The wealthy patient looked around at the staff members he had berated, seeing them properly for perhaps the first time. Sarah Chen's professional composure, maintained despite hours of his abuse, now seemed like a testament to strength rather than a target for his demands. I apologize, Thompson began awkwardly. My behavior was unacceptable. I let my sense of entitlement override basic human decency. The apology might have sounded forced, but something in his expression suggested a genuine realization of how his actions had affected others. The staff members exchanged glances, years of experience making them cautiously optimistic about this show of contrition. Dr. Morrison stepped forward again, his authority now reinforced by institutional support. Mr. Thompson, we appreciate your apology. But understanding needs to come with action. Your future treatment at this hospital will be contingent on maintaining appropriate behavior toward all staff members. The message was clear. No amount of financial contribution would buy the right to abuse healthcare workers. The policy change wasn't just about this one incident, it was about establishing a new standard for how the hospital valued and protected its staff. Statham's phone buzzed with confirmation that his foundation was ready to move forward. Starting today, he announced, We're establishing the Healthcare Heroes Support Initiative. It will provide resources for staff development, create clear protocols for protecting workers from abuse, and establish recognition programs for exceptional service. Sarah Chin, still maintaining her professional demeanor, spoke up. It's not just about the abuse, she explained. It's about being seen as human beings, as professionals who deserve respect regardless of a patient's financial status. The action star nodded in agreement. That's exactly what this initiative will address. Not just protecting staff from negative behavior, but actively creating a culture of respect and recognition. The emergency department's usual rhythms had begun to return, but something fundamental had shifted. Staff members moved about their duties with renewed confidence, knowing that their dignity and professional status would now be actively protected. Thompson, cleared for discharge with confirmation of simple acid reflux, prepared to leave under very different circumstances than he had imagined. His attempts to demand special treatment had led not to staff members being disciplined, but to a complete transformation of how the hospital handled such behavior. "You know what real power is?" Statham asked as the wealthy patient gathered his belongings. "It's not about how much money you can donate or how many people you can intimidate. It's about the impact you have on others' lives." These healthcare workers demonstrate that power every day through their dedication and professionalism. The evening's events had set in motion changes that would ripple through not just Beverly Hills General, but potentially the entire healthcare system. What had started as one man standing up against abusive behavior had evolved into a movement for protecting and valuing healthcare workers. But the most significant changes were visible in the small interactions, the way staff members held their heads higher, the newfound confidence in addressing difficult patients, the sense that their dignity and professionalism would no longer be sacrificed in the name of appeasing wealthy donors. As the night shift began to arrive, being briefed on the evening's events and the changes they had sparked, it became clear that this was more than just an isolated incident. It was the beginning of a transformation in how healthcare workers were valued and protected. What happened next would prove that sometimes the most powerful acts of heroism don't involve physical confrontation, but rather the courage to stand up for what's right and the wisdom to create lasting change. The real impact of this evening was just beginning to unfold. 6 months after Jason Statham's unexpected intervention at Beverly Hills General Hospital, the emergency department had undergone a transformation that went far beyond its physical appearance. The Healthcare Heroes Support Initiative had grown from a single confrontation into a model program that was being studied by hospitals across the country. Sarah Chen, now serving as the program's first staff advocate alongside her nursing duties, stood in the newly renovated staff lounge addressing a group of healthcare administrators from other hospitals. The room, once a cramped space with broken furniture, had been transformed into a comfortable retreat where staff could genuinely rest and recharge during their demanding shifts. "What we've created here isn't just about protecting staff from abuse," she explained to the visitors. "It's about recognizing and valuing the profound contributions healthcare workers make every day." The changes were visible in both big and small ways. New protocols had been established that gave staff clear support in dealing with abusive behavior, regardless of a patient's financial status. More importantly, the culture had shifted from one of enduring abuse to one of maintaining professional dignity. Richard Thompson, whose behavior had sparked these changes, sat in the audience. The wealthy developer had undergone his own transformation, now serving on the initiative's advisory board and using his influence to promote similar programs at other hospitals. "I was the problem," he admitted to the gathered administrators. "I thought my donations gave me the right to demand special treatment, to treat healthcare workers as servants rather than professionals. What I've learned is that their daily contributions far exceed any financial support I could provide." Jason Statham had returned for this 6-month review of the program's impact. The action star sat quietly in the back of the room, preferring to let the healthcare workers take center stage in telling their story of transformation. "The most significant change," Dr. Morrison shared with the group, "isn't in our policies or procedures. It's in how our staff carries themselves, knowing they have real support in maintaining their professional dignity." The young orderly who had been berated that fateful night was now in medical school, supported by a scholarship program established through the initiative. He still worked part-time at the hospital, but now he helped train other staff members in handling difficult situations with confidence. What Mr. Statham showed us that night, he explained to the visitors, wasn't just about standing up to one abusive patient. It was about recognizing our own worth and the importance of maintaining professional standards regardless of a patient's status. The initiative had expanded beyond its original scope. In addition to protecting staff from abuse, it now provided comprehensive support for healthcare workers' well-being. Mental health resources, professional development opportunities, and recognition programs had been established to support those who dedicated their lives to helping others. Sarah shared statistics that demonstrated the program's impact. Staff turnover had decreased dramatically. Patient satisfaction scores had actually improved, proving that maintaining professional standards enhanced rather than hindered care. More importantly, healthcare workers reported feeling valued and protected in their roles. But the real success stories, she explained, are in the daily interactions. Watch our staff for a day, and you'll see people working with confidence and dignity, knowing they have real support in maintaining professional standards. Thompson's own story had become part of the hospital's training program, not as an example of bad behavior, but as a demonstration that real change was possible when people recognized the need to do better. I still support this hospital financially, he told the group. But now I understand that my contributions are nothing compared to the daily dedication of these healthcare workers. My role isn't to demand special treatment, but to support those who provide care with such professionalism. The initiative had created ripple effects throughout the healthcare system. Other hospitals had begun implementing similar programs, recognizing that protecting staff dignity wasn't just about employee satisfaction, it was about providing better care for all patients. You know what we've learned? Dr. Morrison asked the visiting administrators. When staff feel valued and protected, they provide better care. Not because they're afraid of consequences, but because they can focus on their work without fear of abuse. Statham finally spoke up, his voice carrying the same quiet authority that had commanded attention that first night. What happened 6 months ago wasn't just about stopping one instance of abuse. It was about recognizing that real change requires more than just policies, it requires a fundamental shift in how we value and support healthcare workers. The Action Stars Foundation had expanded its support, creating a network of hospitals committed to maintaining similar standards. The program had grown beyond one emergency department to become a movement for transforming how healthcare workers were treated across the industry. Sarah shared her own perspective on the changes. 6 months ago, I accepted abuse as part of the job. Now I understand that maintaining professional dignity isn't just about self-respect, it's about providing better care for our patients. The young nurses and orderlies who had once tried to make themselves invisible during difficult encounters now moved through the department with confidence. They knew that maintaining professional standards wasn't just allowed, it was expected and supported. Thompson stood to make his own announcement. My foundation is committing additional resources to expanding this program. But more importantly, we're establishing a network of business leaders committed to changing how they interact with healthcare workers. Real change has to come from both sides. The emergency department's usual rhythms continued around them, monitors beeping, phones ringing, staff moving efficiently between patients. But now there was a different energy in the air, a sense of professional pride and dignity that had replaced the former atmosphere of enduring abuse to avoid conflict. As the presentation concluded, Statham shared a final observation that captured the essence of what had been accomplished. Real heroes aren't just the ones who make grand gestures or dramatic interventions. They're the ones who show up every day, maintain their professionalism in the face of challenges, and dedicate themselves to helping others. The Healthcare Heroes Support Initiative would continue to grow, spreading its influence throughout the healthcare system. But its most important impact would always be visible in the daily interactions between staff and patients, in the maintained dignity of healthcare workers, and in the understanding that real care requires mutual respect. Sarah concluded the presentation with words that resonated deeply with everyone present. 6 months ago, we accepted abuse as part of our job. Today, we understand that maintaining professional dignity isn't just about us. It's about providing the best possible care for every patient. And that's a change that benefits everyone. The story of that night in the emergency department had become more than just a tale of standing up to abuse. It had become a blueprint for transforming how healthcare workers were valued and protected, proving that sometimes the most powerful changes start with one person willing to say, "This isn't right," and others brave enough to create lasting solutions. As the visitors departed, carrying with them plans to implement similar programs in their own hospitals, the Beverly Hills General Emergency Department continued its vital work. But now it did so with a new understanding that maintaining professional dignity wasn't just about protecting staff, it was about providing better care for everyone who came through their doors.